Begin the program by telling you that President Bola Tinubu has rounded off his official engagement in China, where he met with Nigerians living in the country, describing his visit as very good and successful. The president spoke when he held talks with members of Nigerians in diaspora organization in China and the Nigerian community at the China World Hotel. Also, during his earlier discussions with President Xi Jinping, Premier Li Qiang at the 2024 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, President Tinubu emphasized his efforts to strengthen the cooperation in infrastructure, trade, finance, energy, green economy, and mining. On the program today, we'll talk about the gains of President Tinubu's international engagements, particularly the elevation of ties between the two countries to a strategic, comprehensive partnership. Joining us live is a public affairs analyst and former media aide to President Goodluck Jonathan, Reno Omokri. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Omokri.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, Nigerians are eager to know the benefits from these foreign trips, bilateral relationships between Nigerians and these countries that the president have been visiting lately.
Yeah, so what's the question?
So my question is, they want to know the benefits of these bilateral relationships between Nigerians and this country. We just finished with China right now. What are the gains from this visit?
Well, if you look at China, let's take China as a specific case study. So the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, what's happened with this forum is that President Xi has given Africa 50 billion. Now, it's not as easy as that. The headlines are saying he's giving Africa 50 billion, but much of that money, about 27 billion, is going to come in the form of credit. So it's not actually a gift. And then we have about $11 billion out of that fund is going to be in direct aid. So that's not credit. It's just like a gift to African countries. And then you have $141 million in military aid. So obviously that's going to help us in Africa, because if you look at the kinds of loans that we've been getting from the West, they've been coming with conditions. For example, with the Bretton Woods, they're asking a lot of African countries to take policies like the LGBTQ policies that we don't want in Africa. So with Chinese loans, they don't come with those kinds of conditions. So that's one of the benefits. And then also, a lot of infrastructure is going to come out of this meeting, this visit. So the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, President Xi said it's going to be building infrastructure all over Africa, and Nigeria in particular. So if we can have infrastructure, for example, we're going to be needing roads in Nigeria. We're currently building the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. It's already been awarded, but then, subcontracts could be given out. So we also have the Sokoto Badagry Expressway. So in terms of infrastructure, we're going to get that. Also, he has pledged to train 6,000 military officers from Africa, of which the bulk of that is going to come from Nigeria. So in terms of our our war on terror, we're going to be seeing that we're going to have closer ties with China. But then, there are upsides, there are also downsides. If you look at what China is doing, one of the things is with this Forum on Africa, of China-Africa Cooperation, it happens every 3 years. What we expect from China is that it should be structured like the Commonwealth of Nations, whereby it's not just holding every 3 years in China. Because if it's held every 3 years in China, that means that China has an overwhelming influence on the policy, and they can set the agenda. So probably they might want to move it from country to country. So maybe this year is held in Nigeria, next year is held in China, the third one is held in South Africa. But other than that, for this trip, it was a major win for Nigeria, a major win for President Bola Tinubu.
People will tell you that there's always a backlash. There's always a kind of payback time when it comes to collecting loan from these institutions, especially a country like China. Nigerians will also tell you that what happened between the Ogun State government recently and the Chinese government. Now we don't know the situation as regard that that very unfortunate event. So a lot of people will say that this will come at a cost, that it's not free at all. And at the end of the day, if we are not able to hold our own side of the bargain, that there will be a backlash.
But I did say that these were not just gifts, Although the headline said 50 billion given to Africa, I told you that about 27 billion of that is going to be credit. But let me correct you. What happened with Ogun State and the Chinese firm was not a government to a government affair. It was a government to private company affair. So it's not the Chinese state taking Nigeria to court in France and in the United States and seizing our presidential jets. No, that is a Chinese firm. As a matter of fact, the Chinese government intervened, and that's why the firm began to back down. They released one of the jets, and then they started to enter into talks. So, if you're using that as a case study, that's not a very good case study. Yes, with anybody, if you take a loan, if you go to a bank and you take a loan and you refuse to pay back, of course, there's going to be payback. They're going to seize your collateral. So it's to be expected. These are not freebies. $27 billion in credit. But then if you look at what China has been doing, and I'm not speaking for China, I would rather Nigeria was able to sort our funds internally. But if you look at what China has been doing, take a country like Kenya. Kenya owes China about $8 billion. So they owe China more than we in Nigeria owe China. But China hasn't done much damage to them. As a matter of fact, President Ruto on this trip, on this forum for China-Africa Cooperation, he actually asked for $1 billion more, and I think he's going to get it. But if you look at the upside, I think the upside are more than the downside. What we can do on our own end is for President Bola Tinubu to begin to, just put in some safeguards. So, for example, we talk about infrastructure. China is notorious for using infrastructural projects all over the world, not just in Africa, all over the world, as a way of, let's say, getting rid of their prisoner population. So they take prisoners, conscript them into CTE city, and then they send them to various countries and to act as labor. So what we should say is that, okay, you're going to build roads, you're going to build infrastructure, you're going to build railways, but we want you to employ Nigerians. We don't want you to bring in Chinese convicts into Nigeria to build this. And then also on our end, we can begin to say that, okay, if you want Africa to develop, if you want Nigeria to develop, there are certain things that you can do. Now, one of the things that you can do to help us develop is this. In Nigeria, for example, you're flooding Nigeria with cheap Chinese textiles, and we've got, a cluster in Kaduna, the textile industry, and that textile industry is suffering because of what you are doing in China. So if we can appeal to the Chinese government to just stop that, to use some, let's say, affirmative action to stop, because if we ban Chinese textiles in Nigeria, it's not going to work. They're just going to go to Benin Republic, Togo, and then they're going to smuggle it through the border. So we need to have affirmative action so that our own textile industry can grow. Also, if you look at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, for instance, now Airtel and MTN are the biggest publicly traded company at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. One of the reasons why is because our neighbors, people like Benin Republic, Togo, Cameroon, instead of them getting cement from Dangote Cement, they're getting cheap cement from China. So if we can talk to the Chinese government to do something about that, then that is going to be another upside. But other than that, if you look at it, if you take it into account, there are more upsides to this deal than downsides.
A lot of people will tell you that the Western nations, like Americans and European countries, that they will not be happy with seeming close ties with the Chinese government because of the the international alignment, and they will tell you that, look, if you want to go with the Chinese, that there are some things they are not going to give to us. Like we need military support, we need defense pact, we need so many things from the Western, the Americans and the European, from Europe, that, look, we might not get that easily from the Chinese government.
Well, that's not going to make sense, because if you look at the U.S. right now, the 7 largest publicly traded companies in the United States, they're going to be Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, Amazon, Google. So you have these companies, you also have Alphabet. These companies, they are all in China. So as a matter of fact, these companies, their total assets in China is something like about 2.7 trillion. So you've got American firms. The whole of the business and the trade between Nigeria and China is probably going to be maybe about 3.3 billion. You have American corporations having something like 2.7 trillion in terms of trade. If you use an iPhone, your iPhone is made in China. If you're using a lot of products that you buy on Amazon, it's gotten from China. So there are closer economic links between the United States and China than between Nigeria and China. So I don't think that's going to happen, because if you look at our style of government, we are a democracy, we are practicing capitalism, and those are more aligned to Western democracies. But having said that, it is not the responsibility of Nigeria to conduct our foreign affairs, our foreign relations to please anybody. Our foreign relations have to be done to please Nigeria. We're looking for infrastructure, we're looking for credit. Anybody that can give us that in the best possible terms is going to be our friend. We don't care about your quarrels with China or with Russia. We want to develop. And if you can help us develop, then that's what we want.
Ultimately, we are looking at the trade talks. Last administration, there's been this trade talk between Nigeria and China, but till now, we're yet to see the benefit of that particular deal. I remember them talking about Naira swapping, the Naira swapping deal that time.
Well, the NrSwap deal did not work because it wasn't implemented. And if you want to have answers to that question, then you need to bring Godwin Emefiele out of prison and you need to get General Muhammadu Buhari on this chair. They are the best people to respond to that. But we're talking about now, in the here and now. In the here and now, we're seeing implementation. We're seeing that, this government, we do have some challenges with insecurity in our country. So obviously, the fact that China wants to help train our military officers is going to be good. We do have a challenge with infrastructural deficit. As a matter of fact, Nigeria has a housing deficit of about 21 million. So if we have a partner like China that's going to help us build houses, then that's okay. But we cannot be looking at what happened in the past and say, okay, well, because of that, then we're going to just become a bit skeptic with them. No, in the case of General Muhammadu Buhari, a lot of those things did not pan out because the Buhari administration did not implement them. And we can't blame China for that. Now, having said that, we need to conduct our own affairs in the best interest of Nigeria. And so, however we can do that, we got to do that.
How will they help us to solve our local problem? We talked about problems earlier. Right now, in the energy sector, the food sector, we have a big problem. A lot of Nigerians are complaining and they are groaning and they're saying, look, we can't continue like this. Some parts in the north, they sell as much as 1,300, 1,200 naira per liter. And a lot of Nigerians see that this is not the reason why they voted for the ruling party, that, look, this is not what they told Nigerians, that they actually came out to tell Nigerians they're going to do something about the price, as at that time at 100 and something, that they're going to do something to reduce it. Right now, we're in a situation whereby people are purchasing this commodity for 1,000 naira. Almost 1,000 naira.
Things to you. You got to understand how government operates. There are 4 ways by which a government can get revenue, 4 ways. So the first one is to seize the resources that belong to the states and the people, and then we sell that in the central government. That's what General Aguiyi did on May 24, 1966, with the unification of Affairs Decree. Now, the second way by which you can get revenue as a state, as a country, is to tax individuals, tax states, and tax corporations. Now, the third way is by borrowing money, and the fourth way is by printing money. Beyond these 4 ways, a country cannot make revenue. Now, if you look at Nigeria's own situation, we make about $36 billion from oil and gas every year. If you divide that by Nigeria's population, you get $150 per citizen. And from that $150 per citizen, you expect the country to build infrastructure, to pay civil servants, to maintain the military and law enforcement, to also do a lot of free education, free healthcare. Now, it's not going to work. We're not getting enough revenue. Our population is expanding very fast. We've got one of the fastest growing populations in the world. Our population is increasing at a rate of 2.1%. Now, if you say, okay, we're going to get money by taxing Nigerians, less than 10% of Nigerians pay taxes. Our tax to GDP ratio in Nigeria is something about 8.5%. So if a country like Ivory Coast has a larger tax to GDP ratio than Nigeria. Germany has 39%. In the United States, 59.9% of adults in America pay tax. In Nigeria, less than 10% of the people pay tax. So what are you going to do? Then, okay, you're going to borrow. If you borrow, which is what the Buhari administration was doing, the Buhari administration, they borrowed more money than the Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, Jonathan governments combined. And that's why we're in this mess. So you're left with the fourth option, printing money. If you start to print money, what's going to happen is that you're going to devalue the money already in circulation. Because when you print money without it being backed by the productive capacity of your organized private sector and your people, it's going to lead to massive inflation and devaluation of your currency. So Nigeria has to realize that the old way of doing things, where Nigerians were living at the expense of the Nigerian state, it's gone. It's gone forever. It cannot work. If we keep on doing that way, we're going to be like Zimbabwe or Venezuela. Our economy is going to collapse. So we need to have a situation whereby the government takes its hand away from the pricing of petroleum products. So that
but this move has thrown the country, Nigerians, into untold hardship. That's what that's what we are experiencing since you announced the removal of a subsidy. Removing your hand from that sector and allowing people to buy at the landing cost or whatever cost we have now. But people are poorer. People are not finding it easy in the country.
Well, but that's what I'm explaining to you. We need to live within our means. Because what you're asking the government to do, if you want the government to begin to bring back subsidy or to artificially reduce the price of petroleum products, is that we should either borrow more money. And you got to understand, right now, as I speak to you right now, Nigeria is the third largest debtor to the World Bank's International Development Association. So our debt to GDP ratio is getting to the point where it's going to be unsustainable. So if you look at our revenue right now, we are spending a lot of money servicing our debts, servicing and repaying our debts. And these are not monies that this administration took. These are monies that previous administration took. These are loans that previous administrations took. So, it got to a point whereby we were spending, I think it was about 91% of our revenue on debt servicing. So that means that for every 1 naira Nigeria was making, we're spending 91 kobo servicing our debts. So we have to learn to live within our means. If it means that for a period of time, we're going to face hardship, then so be it. Because otherwise, if you have a child and you're giving your child breast milk, it's got to get to a point whereby your child will have to be weaned of that breast milk. And when your child is being weaned of that breast milk, your child is going to cry. Your child is going to do as if it's going to die. It's going to show tantrums. It's going to start to roll on the floor. But if the child is not weaned of breast milk, the child is not going to mature. That's the state that we're in Nigeria. Other countries have passed through it. If we don't pass through it, we're just going to be delaying the evil day, or worse, we can become like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, whereby our economy is going to collapse. Is that what you want? No.
Are even telling me that you are never in Nigeria, you are hardly even in the country, and you are telling people in the country to withstand this kind of a hardship? You don't know what people are going through?
Even if I'm not in the country, I've got businesses in the country. I have staff that I'm paying salaries in the country. I pay tax. I'm one of the few Nigerians that are paying tax. Last year, and I can bring my certificate to you, I paid about 2.7 million in tax in Nigeria. You've got some people, they are listening to Simon Ekpa in Finland. He's in the country. Yes, a lot of people are listening to him. You've got people that are listening to so-called activists that are out of the country. Ayodele he was in New Jersey. He asked Nigerians to go on a protest. They went on a protest. They destroyed public infrastructure to the tune of 200 billion naira. Ayodele and Simon Ekpa, they don't have investments in that country. I've got investments. I've got student hostels. I've got businesses. I buy innocent vehicles. So I'm putting money into that economy. So I do have the right to talk. And that's why Business Insider magazine made me as the most influential business person on the internet from Africa.
Ultimately, do you think at this curve, how long do you think this is going to last? Because Nigerians are gnashing their teeth.
Well, if Nigerians are gnashing their teeth, let's look at the macroeconomic policies. Let's look at what's happening. For the first time in a long time, we've got a trade surplus. What's a trade surplus? That means that we are now exporting more than we are importing, which is a good thing. So if we are having this situation right now, what we need is that we need our country and our citizens to be patient, to understand what is happening. Look, I see some people, they compare Nigeria to a country like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has about $350 billion worth of oil revenue every year. If you divide that by their population, that's $10,000 per citizen. You can't compare Saudi Arabia with Nigeria. In terms of oil and resources, we are resource poor in Nigeria. So we need to make sure that we begin to live within our resources. And after that, we're going to start heading up somewhere.
A lot of people feel that some people that voted for Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the president, that they made the wrong choice. Because a lot of people are saying that if they had given the likes of Peter Obi or Atiku Abubakar the opportunity, that we would not be where we are today.
Well, I believe that Waziri Atiku Abubakar is a very good presidential candidate anywhere, anytime. And if he was in charge of the Nigerian economy, I believe that he would do well. Having said that, all of the major presidential candidates said they were going to remove fuel subsidy. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Peter Obi. I can show you on video. Peter Obi said, and I'm quoting him, subsidy will go on day one. That's what he said. Subsidy will go on day one. So, if you are now trying to say that, oh, Peter Obi or any other president have done things differently, it doesn't make sense. Because they already said during the campaigns that they were also going to do what the president is doing now, which is remove the subsidy on oil and also float the naira. So any other thing right now is not going to be the same.
I just want to check the reflection. Let me see.
All right, we'll take this breather. When we come back, we'll talk more.